Back, Vagabonds, and welcome, Wanderers. Today is going to be a little bit of a hard video for me. I'm in the PTB of Dead by Daylight. We have the community killer that we all voted for, and this is why this video is going to be harder for me. Because I was super looking forward to this killer. I'm going to have some gameplay in the background with the two obviously meta perks we have right now against AI because queue times are insane. I'm saying this is hard for me because I'm honestly probably the most disappointed with Dead by Daylight that I have ever been with the release of this killer. And I think a lot of people are off the mark. They're not really seeing... They're not really seeing this killer for what it actually is. Everyone is saying that the killer is just a very high skill ceiling, but the unfortunate truth of the matter is this is just a killer of very, very poor design. The ability, aiming, and the skill shot is not actually a skill issue thing. There's so much RNG, there's a bunch of math behind it. It's just not a reasonable ability, and it isn't a measure of skill that is causing this problem. Now, obviously, you're going to get people who will be able to land some shots. Most of the shots you're going to land are going to be near completely RNG. Even if you're making attempts to thoughtfully land the shots. So I've played games that have operated with similar abilities, but they're not asim games like this where, you know, it's significantly more difficult because you're relying on each individual person on the other side to operate around your ability. So I'm going to go in order of probably the least egregious issues to the most with this killer that I have played so far. The least being you rely so heavily on aura reading. It really takes out any possible build variety, and being super reliant on perks while other perks just don't even work with your character. I guess it's kind of sad that we have another killer where their inherent power sending people off to the realm doesn't actually work with hooks, like hooking, which I understand. That'd be pretty strong in some cases, but not all. The other issue I have with this is obviously add-on dependent. The skill shot taking so long to actually initiate. It's very hard to gauge for a lot of people. I have learned that if you immediately fire off the power, it travels the shack wall's length. And what I mean by that is it'll activate right at the corner of shack here. That's the distance you have to gauge if you're just firing it off straight ahead normally. The other issue I have with that, with the skill shot particularly, is angling it is a huge problem. So like, even behaviors like, oh yeah, do the 180, charge it up, fire it off after aiming. The issue is the time it takes. There's an animation lock issue, as per usual, with many killers in Dead by Daylight, at least the ones that I play. Animation locking is a scourge in this game. They really need to lighten up on it. It's miserable. It makes a lot of killers near unplayable, and that's probably why you guys see a lot of the high-end killers where they are at, because they don't care as much about animation locking. Which is unfortunate. We lose variety because of bad game design. Those are kind of the lightest to mid things. The worst, one of the, I want to say, 2 to 3 yeah, 3 of the worst things about this killer that makes it essentially unplayable. The high skills floor, if you will, for this character. Of course, being 4.4 movement speed, you rely so heavily on making every movement count. But you combine that with the animation lock, the time it takes to actually channel, even something like having to aim backwards. Look how long that takes for me to shoot quote-unquote straight. Which even that little bit of being off-put from a direct 180, when trying to land a hit like this, that little bit off, your shot isn't actually straight. And that mechanically makes it significantly worse. The second issue that also plays into her being 4.4 is obviously short loops. Loops in general. But short loops, once again, are an issue. You're not allowed to use your power. You're only M1. So you might as well just play an M1 killer who can deal with loops. If I were to try to use my power here while this guy was running Shack, I would not have landed the hit. Because he's behind the rock, I can't tell where he is or where he's going, so I can't make the prediction. If I try to fire off a beam here and aim it back at him, I don't know where he went. I was close. I assumed that's where he was going to be, but you miss so often, and you slow down because of it, you end up losing out on chase because of it. You might as well just run this guy down and M1. Which feels bad. I want to use the power. I want to be able to use the character. Because I can't use the character, the survivor doesn't get to go into the exiled realm either. Again, these are bots, so they don't necessarily care. But why do I have to play as a killer? I can't even use the killer. I just have to play your typical M1 character. Because the power is so restricted by animation lock, by range, by RNG. That's why aura is so important on this character, because if you can't see where people are going, you're not going to be able to actually act on your power. And even then, a lot of your power comes from range hits, setting people up to then just boringly chase them in a normal M1 and hit them. You're just dealing damage to people. You might as well run Nurse's Calling. The two meta ones going on right now, which is Nemesis and whatever the other one is. Celestial Witness. You might as well just run those two so you have someone to chase. Nurse's Calling, and then, I don't know, Distressing. So then when you land a hit, you go after that person. If they're healing, you just get information. And you can see I'm tracking people. You can see I'm able to play the character at least semi-competently. I understand the ability. I understand the range required. The angles I need. There's too much RNG. And once you get anywhere in that mid-range, it's not even worth using the power. It makes it so... It makes it so pathetic. I hate it. It's not a high skill floor, it's just bad game design. And the worst part about this killer has to be the power itself. The effort it takes to actually aim it, it just doesn't work. The fact that you have to use your body to aim the projectile. Because the projectile itself aims based on where you are facing. So if you lose track of where the survivor is, your AoE is, or where you are placed, your camera angle, if you lose track of any of those three things at any time, if you get caught on an obstacle because you're looking away to try to aim the power properly, if you lose sight of a survivor and you don't know which direction they went because you have to 180 to try to land something closer, if you have to do all these different things, if you lose sense of any of those three things, you have very high chances of just missing your power completely. It feels terrible. And it's not a high skill floor. You can comprehend line AoEs, you can comprehend charging up powers, you can comprehend the proper angles, depth perception, all these different aspects. That does not make it good. That also isn't a skill expression thing. I was super excited for this killer. This was the killer that was going to bring me back to Dead by Daylight as someone who plays Trickster. And with the experience I have with Trickster, that is a mid-range killer. That is someone who is in the mid-ground. I already understand the concepts of range, mid-range, playing the mid-range. I already understand the concept of having to aim your character, of having to actually look and see what you're doing. I understand all these concepts. I understand that I need to actually aim things properly and aim ahead of where I'm going, and knowing where my minimum ranges are, where my maximum ranges are, what I need to account for in terms of walls and corners and survivor areas. I already understand this. From before Dead by Daylight, I've understood this. With so many other games, I've understood this. The issue is the execution is so blatantly pressing against the community killer. This should have been a killer who was more accessible to everyone, because it is the community killer, where everybody had at least a semblance of a voice, at least in the concept design. Even if it wasn't the final thing you wanted, you had the choice to actually involve yourself in this. And it's sad that this killer is not going to get the time in the spotlight that is deserved. It is sad that so many people are going to be dropping this killer. I can see it happening. And it is sad that we continue behavior. We continue to not understand our own game. We continue to be bad developers, to make poor decisions, to make things that work against itself, to make things that are so miserable. Something so cool, all of the effort put into the art design, the perk design, because the perks actually work fairly well, especially this one. You put so much time and effort into this. You add entire interactions with another realm. You have protections for the killer that the killer needs. Especially being 4.4, especially with the animation lock. Things like blocking out survivors from the exit gates if they get too cocky. Forcing the hook states and forcing another objective for survivors to actually try to do, instead of sitting on a generator. You had so much right direction, and you ruin it because you are so in your own heads, and so high up on your soapbox, and so full of yourselves, and so cocky and confident, because you want to sprinkle on all this fluff and glitter dust and all this stuff to say, hey, look at this super cool thing we made. Look at how we've innovated. You haven't. Because at the foundational level, once again, you have failed. You have failed your game. You have failed your community. You have failed me. When are the players going to hold these developers accountable? By saying enough is enough and dropping this game completely. That is what it will take, because these developers will not change until they are forced to. This isn't experimenting with something new. This is just more of the same. It's more of them not playing the game, understanding simple concepts that have been in the game for so long. No, I do not want to, as the killer, run around a teeny tiny loop and be abused by the survivors and have to chase one person through 2 to 3 gens to get a single down because you don't understand how to work a power around that. You don't know how to make it so that a killer can play the game. You don't want that. You want survivors to feel so good about themselves, and you want them to get 4 leaves, and you don't want any fair play at all whatsoever on either side. And again, you will land skill shots. You will be able to actually play competently and do things as this killer. but it will not be because of skill. It will be because of RNG, or you just not playing the killer, but playing an M1, a slower M1. I, for one, am going to be running Celestial Witness and Nemesis on some other killers. I will be taking advantage of those two. What you see right now in my build, I will be running this. Depending on the killer, I'll get rid of Haywire. My thought process was, well, I have access to the exit gates very easily, so if they do get to end game, because I'm playing this character at least semi-competently, a lot of it is I have confidence in my general ability to play the game at a base level where I don't need the perks. I'm going to have stuff for end game. I'm going to make it so that I can take care of the obsession, kill the obsession, be able to swap that around at least once at the exit gates, and use my power to put pressure on both exit gates. So then while they're repairing, if they get over that 80% progress, if I fire out a beam and they 99 the door, or even before that, maybe I save a little bit of time. I hit them with the beam, I see that they're there, they back off of that exit gate. That gives me a little more time to actually run Rancor, Nemesis, and Celestial Witness. That's where my brain went for that. But the overall gameplay, at a foundational level, this killer fails. And I'm tired of it, and I am done with it. Behavior, you need to change. And it's not just me, it's so many people. It layers onto why killers are quitting, swapping to survivors, and maybe that's what behavior wants. Maybe they just want more survivors, so then they make more money, because people will just buy cosmetics for survivors. Well, if I can't play killer, I guess I'll just play survivor. Enough is enough. This was supposed to be a fantastic, super cool, open for everyone killer. It is not a skill floor issue. It is not a high skill floor. It is bad design. It's bad design to have to aim the power the way you do in the type of environment that is being made by behavior. I landed the shots I did because it was bots. Again, like I said, I have the semblance of ability of knowing where to aim things, how the angles work, all these different things. I've seen it in other games, but Dead by Daylight does it poorly because it's behavior, which, typical. They need to actually change things, because when I turn into a 4.4 M1 killer, because the entire game is riddled with walls, short loops, pallets, pallet density, hello, when the game is riddled with all of that, I don't have the time in a match to sit through animation lock and absurd slowdown to my movement to miss an ability because a survivor vaults over a wall or hits the A or D key for half a second. Enough is enough. We need to start calling out behavior. We cannot keep letting them do this, and nothing's going to change until their bottom line changes. This is miserable, and it's heartbreaking for me because this was going to be the killer that brought me back. I was so confident, and as soon as I loaded up the game and played the first couple matches as against bots to understand the power and see what it did for myself, I appreciate the effort of the direction they were going. I like having an additional objective. I like that they can't just go to hook with a bunch of protections and a bunch of different perks and get crazy benefits from the state. I'm glad I can actually benefit off of landing my ability. The issue is, can I land my ability? If I don't land my ability, I lose all of that. It is a high risk, low reward. Guys, when you look at a killer, you need to factor in everything. Individual things look cool, but what about the long run? What about everything else? What happens with a 4.4 killer when they get to a short loop and they're a range killer who relies heavily on their power to actually do anything with their kit? You just ignore the person you're looping, just fire off beams in random directions, hope you hit someone else, and then go after that person instead of capitalizing on who you're chasing? Map design doesn't help. Yeah, the beam goes through 2 floors. How many maps do we have that have multiple floors where you actually lose out as this killer? When do you benefit on Meat Plant, where survivors can duck behind walls and the hallways are just big enough where you're able to just dodge beams so you'll never land a hit because survivors will just be weaving back and forth in a hallway waiting for you to fire off a beam. If you go at the long way, they'll dodge it. Go at it the short way and try to predict exactly where they're at. You miss because they're waiting for the ability for you to use it in chase. You can't use it in chase. You just have to walk at someone. at 4.4. And because you're so reliant on auras, you're already missing out on 2 perk slots. So what am I going to run? Bamboozle? That's not fast enough. What about my movement speed? Do I run Fire Up? And why do I have to rely on the perks so heavily instead of just the character being well designed? It's another instance of I don't have the time to stop to break generators. I don't have the time to run short loops. I don't have the time to break pallets. I don't have the time to hook people. So if I don't land my beam, or even get people into the heretic state, I'm just going to leave you slugged on the floor. Because I don't have the time to pick you up, walk you to a hook, put you on the hook, so that you can get benefits from it, and then run me for another 2 to 3 generators. I don't have the time. And that is a foundational issue with the killer, and so many other killers in this game. That's why you see people slugging and tunneling. Because you do not, in the long term, have the time to do anything else. You sick of people slugging? You sick of people tunneling? The game needs to be fixed. Otherwise, that will continue. And this killer is another testament to that. Because why the hell would I not go after someone that I ping with my beam that I'm finally landing after everyone's just easily dodging it? Because it's a very, 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 very underground skill floor to play against this killer. But playing as the killer, it's astronomically different. It's pathetic, it's miserable, and I'm sick of seeing behavior going in this direction. Fix your game.